feel like we've been on a journey of love, like we've just been taken to Jerusalem and with them on that journey. Thank you so very much. When many long-term churchgoers think of the Lenten season, we think of Jesus' journey to the cross. That's what the 40 days plus Sundays leading up to Easter is generally about. It starts with Ash Wednesday, which was last Wednesday, reminding us that from dust we came and to dust we return. And then it ends with Jesus in the grave on Good Friday and Saturday. The reason this season of Lent is so sacred is because it is one of self-sacrifice and self-reflection. We reflect on our own spiritual lives and what we are willing to do for others because of our faith. When this season of Lent is done properly, it can be deeply enriching. But if we're honest, at times it has done harm. For those who struggle with low self-esteem, the focus of sin can become a reason for self-doubt. And people can get mixed up about what sin really means, that it is personal, but it's also social. And then some people reject the idea of sin altogether. The deeply spiritual season has a tendency to turn dour and morbid if it's misunderstood or handled poorly. And when we focus on the torment that Jesus suffered instead of the love that he lived, then Lent becomes gruesome and perverse. So as I was planning for Lent this year, it occurred to me that the whole idea of Lent is that Jesus' life and death was all about self-giving love. And this willingness to offer oneself in love for the benefit of someone else reminded me of a New York Times best-selling book that has been reprinted again and again. Perhaps you've heard of it or read it, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Anyone read it, heard of it? Oh, good, a few of you. So it seemed to me to be a great idea for a sermon series for Lent, focusing on the ways that we give and receive love from others and how to deepen our commitment to love selflessly. Chapman originally wrote the book for couples. It was so popular that then he expanded his work to include all different kinds of relationships, including those who are single and for people in the workplace. Whatever your situation, there's something about the 5 love languages that will apply to you and the relationships that you hold dear. So each week we're going to explore one of the different 5 love languages. And here they are. So think about whether one of these sounds like the way that you give or receive love. And you may give love one way and like to receive it a different way. So here they are: acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch, and words of affirmation. Do you need to hear them again to get them in your mind? Okay. Acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch, and words of affirmation. These are the 5 love languages. Gary Chapman has been a counselor for 30 years before he wrote this first book, so he knows about how people give and receive love. Arguably, love is the most important word in the English language. But let's be honest, it can also be extremely confusing. We're told that love is a many splendored thing, and that love makes the world go round. Thousands of books and songs and magazines and movies are centered around this word. Jesus certainly valued love and told us that it was the most distinguishable characteristic of his followers. Love God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then the Apostle Paul wrote a lovely poem about the nature of love, and it's read at weddings 2,000 years later. This word permeates human society, but I think it's a confusing word. You're supposed to love your mate, but you love tacos and hamburgers. You may love your child with your whole heart, but you also may love your car or a movie, a school rock shop, or nature. We do all kinds of things that we call love that are frankly unhealthy behaviors. Like a lover, a spouse, cheats with but it's irresponsible parenting. A friend picks up pieces after an alcoholic's drunken escapade, calls it love. It's really codependency. So this season, we're going to focus on Lent as a season of healthy love, self-giving love that's essential to our spiritual and emotional health. And this is the kind of love that Jesus exemplified in his life and taught his disciples to share with the world. If you got a little heart when you came in today, it's to carry around with you in your pocket or your purse. And if you didn't, they're in the baptismal font when you leave. So everyone can pick up a little heart token. These tokens are to take with you today and to carry throughout the Lenten season to remind you of self-giving love. They're to help you remember to offer love, the kind of love that Jesus gave, self-sacrificing love, to friends and family and co-workers, neighbors, and the community, to remember to offer yourself self-sacrificing love this season. Today's love language is acts of service, and Jesus gave a simple but profound illustration of expressing love by an act of service when he washed the feet of his disciples. Most of you probably know the service, the scripture for today. In a culture where people wore sandals and walked on dirt roads, it was customary for a slave or a servant to wash the feet of guests in a house when they arrived. But Jesus took it upon himself, although he was also a guest, to do this task when he took a basin and a towel and washed the feet of his own followers. And then he encouraged them to treat others the same way. This text is printed in your bulletin if you want to follow along. From John 13. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you will have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he also knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, he put on his robe, and he had returned to the table. He said to them, "Do you not know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought also to wash one another. For I have set an example for you, that you also should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." Such actions as cooking a meal, vacuuming, taking out the trash, changing a baby's diaper, painting a bedroom, washing a car, mowing the grass, changing the cat's litter box, all of these are acts of service. They require thought, planning, time, effort, energy. And if they're done with a positive spirit, then they can be expressions of love. This is not just limited to things that we do in the home. You may notice someone in your workplace doing acts of service, whether or not they are that person's job. Washing other people's coffee mugs, making certain that the lights are out around the office in unused rooms, taking out the overflowing trash, picking up crumbs off the floor. They often do these things unnoticed. They're offering love and self-service, self-sacrifice to their coworkers by these acts of service. Now, there are people whose job it is to do these things, and they may be in this position because they choose to do that service full time. I think our sexton, Emily, does this. She can do 1,000 other things quite capably, but she chooses to do the work around the church, and acts of service is one of her gifts. But other people who hold different positions may choose to do these things as an act of service for their coworkers, because it's all about the spirit and the intention with which they do this act. Jesus said that those who are great would serve others. This life of service has always been recognized as a life worthy of emulation. We can all probably recall people from history who viewed their vocation as a calling to serve, from physicians to national leaders to educators to missionaries, even to explorers. Service to others is a great aspiration. There are people who have given their lives for it. Albert Schweitzer, who became notorious, that's a poor choice of words, who became famous, serving the poor in Africa as a physician many years ago, said repeatedly, "As long as there is a man in the world who is hungry, sick, lonely, or living in fear, he is my responsibility." Now, we all have different love languages. In relationships, we may give love in one language, and the other person may prefer to receive love in another language. This is where the sacrificial part comes in. When we love someone, we offer ourselves in ways that are not our normal pattern. So if acts of service is their love language, we may choose to do things in their love language that aren't our normal pattern. So here's an example. My husband, Eric, is an act of service kind of guy. Before I pull my weary head off the pillow in the morning, it is not unusual for him to have already done the laundry, cleaned the kitchen, fed the dogs, worked in the garage, cleaned the cars, or any number of other tasks around the house. He almost always does all the vacuuming. Okay, he always does the vacuuming. I hate vacuuming. When I got pregnant with our daughter 34 years ago, I told him a fib, and that was that our daughter, well, that being pregnant with our daughter, that my physician said I shouldn't vacuum when I was pregnant. And then when I delivered her, I told her that my physician said, after you deliver a baby, you shouldn't vacuum. And then right away I got pregnant again, so, I still couldn't vacuum. Well, our children are now in their 30s. I haven't vacuumed since. So it's not so much that he loves vacuuming, but he loves me. This is the way he shows his love language. If I want to show him how much I love him, I should pay attention to what he's doing and then give it back to him. He really appreciates it when I take care of the little things behind the scene to help out. But ironically, I have a different love language, and this is typical of most married couples. I love to give gifts, and Eric doesn't care too much about gifts. So the point is, when we love someone, our spouse, a friend, or someone else, we need to learn their love language and show our love in that way. So here's your Lenten challenge for the week. Instead of giving up something for Lent, like chocolate or meat, I would suggest you add something for Lent. Add a loving action. Think about the people in your life and consider what person might need a bit of service. And then do an act of service for them with love. If you're ambitious, do one a day or a couple of weeks. And then, would you please drop me an email and let me know about it? I won't mention you by name, but I would love to hear what's happening in your life and how this series is going to help us love more effectively in our world. So remember, each week we're going to talk about a different love language, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch, and words of affirmation. We'll hear more love songs, and we'll enjoy learning how to better love and receive and give this season. As you're able, please stand, and we'll sing our closing song.